Have you ever felt like no matter how hard you work, there's never enough time, never enough energy, never enough acknowledgement? Like you're constantly running on a treadmill that's been speeding up for decades, and somehow everyone around you seems to be running faster, lighter, happier, except you? If that hits close to home, then congratulations, you might just be a millennial. Or at least, you might understand the millennial condition. And trust me, we're not talking about the Instagram memes or the endless jokes about avocado toast. There's a very real psychological and cultural story here. One that explains why burnout isn't just a phase, but almost a generational identity. Millennials, born roughly between 1981 and 1996, grew up during a strange, transitional moment in history. We're the first generation to experience the internet from its awkward infancy. We remember a world without smartphones, and yet we've been thrust into an adult world of constant digital connectivity. The irony is brutal. We learned patience as kids, waiting for dial-up internet to connect, and then grew into adults expected to respond instantly to Slack messages, emails, and DMs. And somewhere in between, we were told to follow our dreams, do what you love, and work hard and you'll succeed. But we weren't warned about the consequences when those promises collide with reality. The truth is, millennials are often described as the Burnout Generation. And that's not just a catchy headline. Psychologists, sociologists, and workplace researchers have noticed patterns that are unique to this age group. We experience high rates of anxiety and depression. We're juggling precarious work conditions, student debt, housing instability, and yet, somehow, we're expected to maintain an illusion of thriving on social media. It's a perfect storm for exhaustion. And what's fascinating is that this isn't just external, it's baked into the way our brains interact with the world we grew up in. Let me explain. Human beings are wired to respond to stress in a certain way. Our nervous system evolved to handle short bursts of threat, a predator, a natural disaster, and immediate danger. Cortisol spikes, heart rate increases, adrenaline kicks in. Then, the threat passes, and the body relaxes. That's how humans survived for hundreds of thousands of years. But what if the threat never passes? What if, instead of a short-lived danger, the stressors are constant, unpredictable, and invisible, like bills piling up, emails flooding in, social comparison spirals, and the fear of falling behind? That's what many millennials experience daily. Chronic stress rewires the nervous system, making our brains hypervigilant, constantly scanning for threats, both real and imagined. It's exhausting, and it's no wonder burnout has become a defining feature of our generation. Consider the workplace. Millennials entered the workforce during a time of rapid technological change. Many of us graduated into a world shaped by the 2008 financial crisis, a recession that fundamentally shifted economic expectations. Job stability, which our parents might have taken for granted, became a luxury. We were told, "You're smart, ambitious, capable. Just work hard and you'll be fine." But what fine actually looked like changed every few months, thanks to layoffs, restructuring, and the always-on digital culture. The constant pressure to perform, innovate, and adapt triggers the same stress response that our brains interpret as danger. Over time, it compounds. And the result is what psychologists call burnout, a state of emotional, mental, and physical exhaustion caused by prolonged stress. Now, burnout isn't just about being tired. It's nuanced. It's a cocktail of exhaustion, cynicism, and reduced efficacy. You show up to work, but your heart isn't in it. You check tasks off a list, but there's no joy, no fulfillment. You may even question your own worth, asking, "Am I enough?" while silently resenting the culture that demands 24/7 productivity. For millennials, this isn't an isolated experience, it's a collective phenomenon. We were raised to value achievement and self-expression, but in a world that simultaneously devalues our contributions, that clash between expectation and reality creates a perfect breeding ground for psychological strain. And it's not just work. Burnout spills into every corner of life. Remember the endless pressure to be successful by a certain age? Homeownership, marriage, career milestones, social status? Millennials carry these cultural timelines like invisible backpacks, stuffed with anxiety, self-doubt, and social comparison. Combine that with the constant hum of social media, the curated lives of peers, the endless highlight reels, and suddenly even our free time is a source of stress. Am I doing enough? Am I living the right way? Will I ever catch up? These aren't idle questions. They're neurochemical triggers, activating stress circuits in our brains over and over again. But here's where it gets interesting. Burnout isn't only a story about failure or weakness. In many ways, it's a story about adaptability and sensitivity. Millennials tend to be highly empathetic, capable of seeing multiple perspectives, and creative in problem solving. We've been trained, implicitly and explicitly, to analyze, optimize, and adapt to a world that's rapidly changing. The downside of that sensitivity is that we feel stress more acutely, we overthink, we ruminate. But the upside is that we're capable of deep reflection and insight. Burnout, in a sense, is a signal, not just of overwhelm, but of engagement with a complex, demanding world. Let's pause for a moment and talk about technology, because it's impossible to separate millennials from the digital environment we inhabit. We grew up in the era of push notifications, instant messaging, and endless scrolling feeds. And here's the kicker, our brains didn't evolve to handle this. Dopamine, the neurotransmitter associated with reward, lights up every time we get a like, a comment, or a notification. That intermittent reinforcement, a concept behavioral psychologists love to study, is the same mechanism that makes slot machines addictive. Every small digital reward triggers the same pleasure circuit, making us crave more, and never quite feel satisfied. Combine that with work emails, news alerts, and the pressure to curate an ideal social self, and you have a recipe for chronic, low-level stress that slowly chips away at mental resilience. The cultural narrative around millennials makes this worse. We're often painted as entitled, lazy, or self-absorbed. Media outlets love to frame our challenges as personal failings rather than structural or generational issues. That external judgment can intensify burnout, creating a feedback loop of guilt and pressure. When your culture tells you, "You're not trying hard enough," even while the system is stacked against you, it's hard not to internalize that message. And that internalization doesn't just hurt emotionally, it literally taxes the brain and body, contributing to the exhaustion we feel. Yet, despite all this, there's resilience here that often goes unnoticed. Millennials are creative, flexible, and resourceful. We're redefining career paths, experimenting with entrepreneurship, gig work, and alternative lifestyles. We seek meaning over traditional measures of success. And while burnout signals stress, it also signals awareness, an attuned nervous system noticing a mismatch between values and demands. The key, then, isn't to blame ourselves, it's to interpret burnout as a message rather than a verdict. Self-awareness becomes crucial. Understanding your own limits, recognizing the signs of fatigue, and building strategies to mitigate chronic stress are not just personal choices, they're survival skills. Mindfulness, digital boundaries, and intentional rest aren't indulgences, they're necessities for maintaining cognitive and emotional health. Even small adjustments, like setting email-free hours, prioritizing deep work over shallow tasks, or simply giving yourself permission to pause, can help rewire our overstimulated nervous systems. Let's not ignore the social dimension either. Millennials often struggle with the paradox of hyperconnectivity and isolation. Social media promises connection but delivers comparison. Friend groups are geographically dispersed, workplaces are remote, and community structures that supported older generations are eroding. The result is a subtle, chronic loneliness that amplifies burnout. But here's the hopeful part. Recognizing this pattern allows us to build intentional, meaningful connections. One thoughtful conversation, one supportive friend, one authentic interaction, these can counterbalance the overstimulation and restore some equilibrium. Financial pressures are another layer. Student loans, skyrocketing housing costs, unstable job markets, these are not abstract concepts. They are daily stressors that keep the nervous system in a heightened state of alert. And because millennials are often expected to adult while juggling these burdens, there's a persistent sense of playing catch-up. That tension between aspiration and constraint creates an ongoing, low-grade anxiety that traditional notions of work-life balance don't fully address. But here's a paradox worth noting. Millennials are also redefining what it means to live well. We're more attuned to mental health, self-care, and emotional intelligence than many previous generations. Therapy, meditation, exercise, creative outlets, and even humor have become tools of survival. We're learning to listen to our bodies and minds in ways our parents' generation might have dismissed as indulgent. And in that, there's a subtle generational wisdom emerging. Burnout is not only a risk but also a teacher. It forces reflection, prioritization, and sometimes radical life adjustments. And speaking of reflection, there's a philosophical angle here that resonates. Many of us are drawn to meaning over mere productivity. We notice when a task feels empty, when a job doesn't align with values, when relationships drain more than they nourish. That sensitivity is both a gift and a burden. It can make the world feel heavier, but it also allows us to navigate life with nuance, empathy, and intention. Burnout, in a sense, is the symptom of being awake to the world, not asleep in the convenience of blind compliance. So what can we take away from all this? First, burnout is not a personal failing, it's a generational signal. It tells us something important about the context we live in, the cultural pressures we face, and the ways our nervous systems respond to modern life. Second, awareness and self-care are not luxuries, they're essential tools for survival and growth. And third, there's meaning embedded in these struggles. By recognizing the stressors, understanding our responses, and taking deliberate steps to restore balance, millennials can navigate this chaotic era with intentionality, not just endurance. In the end, the burnout generation isn't defined solely by exhaustion. We're defined by resilience, creativity, and an acute awareness of life's complexities. We're learning to live in a world that often moves too fast, asks too much, and rewards too little in ways that matter. And maybe the quiet rebellion of our generation isn't in flashy gestures or viral trends, it's in noticing, reflecting, and choosing to care for ourselves despite the pressure to keep running. So if you've ever felt drained, overwhelmed, or like the world is demanding more than you can give, know this: you are not failing. Your nervous system is telling the truth. Your mind and body are speaking. And taking the time to listen, rest, and recalibrate isn't weakness, it's mastery. Burnout is not the end of the story, it's the first page of a chapter where you finally start writing the narrative of your life on your own terms. And maybe, just maybe, that's the quiet power of being a millennial. We're learning to survive in a world designed to overwhelm us, not by running faster, but by running wiser, slower, and with intention. We're discovering that fulfillment isn't about doing more, it's about living smarter, noticing the small joys, honoring our limits, and creating meaning in the cracks between expectation and reality. So next time you scroll through social media, next time you check your email for the 100th time in an hour, pause. Breathe. Remember that burnout is not a verdict, it's a message. And like any message, it has something valuable to teach you about your brain, your priorities, and your life. If this resonates, I'd love to hear your story. How do you manage the pressures? How do you navigate the tension between ambition and exhaustion? Drop a comment below. And if you want to keep exploring the psychology behind everyday life, the quirks of human behavior, the wiring of our brains, the subtle forces shaping our emotions, hit subscribe, because there's so much more to uncover. Because here's the thing, we didn't ask for all of this chaos, but we can choose how we respond to it. And in that choice, we reclaim a little control, a little peace, and a little sanity in a world that constantly wants more. And maybe that's exactly what it means to be the burnout generation, and to survive it, beautifully, intentionally, and with heart.